All right, there's a lot to cover with the Golden State Warriors. Kylen Mills and I are doing an early Saturday Night Live edition. We're going to address all of your ideas regarding trades, free agents, but there's just still a lot to break down regarding Bob Myers, the future of Steve Kerr. All that is next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Where's the copy for that? Wait, today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs, and they gave me no copy for the title sponsor. Well, whatever. Bird Dogs. We're brought to you by Bird Dogs. Great clothes. I love their shorts. So that's Bird Dogs. You can follow Kylen Mills on most, if not all, social media platforms, including Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter @DogSurfRocho. Kylen, great to see you. I know you've been super slammed with your soccer coverage and the Locked On Network mock draft, which will be released soon. Good to see you. And how are you doing? And no one's heard your thoughts yet on Bob Myers leaving. So let's start there.
We've got a lot to cover. Good to be back with you, Cyrus. Yeah, it's been like kind of a crazy 2 weeks. I do soccer coverage in the offseason of basketball. I've started calling some MLS Next Pro games, which is like the second league now under MLS on Apple TV. So also really, really excited. You guys have got to check out on Tuesday, the Locked On NBA mock draft special is dropping. So it's going to be a 6-part series going through picks 1 through 30 made by our Locked On NBA hosts as if they were doing the actual draft themselves, as if they were the GMs of the teams that they cover or host for. So it's going to be really cool. You made a pick in that draft, Cyrus, and we'll see who you selected on there. So there's going to be a lot of fun to be had. You guys definitely want to check that out on Tuesday. All right. So a lot to cover in terms of Bob Myers. Cyrus, you're smiling. I'm very curious to have a little bit of dialogue with you on this. First, I think it's devastating for the Golden State Warriors to see general manager Bob Myers go, who has led them through, what has been a dynasty run through 4 championships. He's the guy who's been constructing the roster. Of course, there's a lot of credit to Joe Lacob for, dishing out the cash, and Steve Kerr for coaching, the players who led the way, Steph Curry, who has created this Golden State Warriors championship. But at the end of the day, Bob Myers is the one who's wheeling and dealing to try to bring the right pieces into Golden State, who has to deal with this unbelievable salary cap situation and the luxury tax situation the Warriors are now presented with. It's been getting worse as the years have gone on. This new CBA has not helped the Warriors situation, and Bob Myers has played a huge, huge, huge role. And in addition to just wheeling and dealing in terms of money and scouting and finding the right pieces that create a championship team, he's been so good at developing relationships. He's fed into the Warriors championship culture. You know how close he was with Steph Curry. I shouldn't say was. You know how close he is, but now he's just going to be not inside the organization anymore. But you know how close Bob Myers is with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, the players who've been here for many years, and even some of the younger guys and guys who've joined the team the last couple seasons. He loves Kevon Looney. He loves Jordan Poole. I mean, he loves all of the players on this Warriors team. And he mentioned in his post-mortem, I don't know what to say is the right word, post-career, I don't know, because it wasn't just your regular postseason presser. He always does a postseason presser, but it was like a goodbye presser. And his farewell presser, I don't know, whatever the right word is. He mentioned that it's been really important to him to develop relationships. And I thought it was interesting. Myers said that a lot of GMs, that he's talked to other people in front offices at different organizations in the NBA, and they told him, don't talk to the players, don't get close to the players, don't get emotional in terms of moving the players, because at the end of the day, you have to make business decisions that help your organization win. It may not always be, what you want to happen, or it may not always be, a happy decision for that player. don't get your emotions involved by getting close to them. And Bob's just like, that's just not the type of person I am. That's not the way that I ever could have treated my role here with the Golden State Warriors. He wanted to make sure that he's just as invested and a part of the family as every other player and member of the organization by building those relationships and getting to know people. He knew how to work with the personalities the Warriors had. So, kudos to Bob Myers for the run. I think it's awful for the Golden State Warriors to say goodbye to him. There's a lot of question marks remaining. It was reported by ESPN that likely Mike Dunleavy is going to be elevated, and likely Kirk Lacob, the son of Joe Lacob, is going to be elevated. Now, elevated is the exact wording that was in the report. I tweeted that out, and a bunch of people started flipping out like, oh my God, nepotism, Kirk Lacob's going to be the GM. Now, the wording was elevated, so we don't know necessarily for sure yet that Kirk Lacob would be the GM. Right now, I think he's like an executive vice president, or is that his formal title?
Correct,
yeah, executive vice president. And Dunleavy's actually the vice president. So in terms of the next in line, Dunleavy would be the person who would step into that general manager role just by succession of how the structure is set up. Not Kirk Lacob. So we'll have to see exactly what that means. I would like to see the Warriors, and there's a couple of different questions I have for you, Cyrus.
Yeah.
Number one, so two questions we're going to have to delve into separately. But first, who is the next best candidate? Or what should the Warriors do with this GM position? My other question that I've been kicking around is just, I don't know. I read between the lines in a lot of things that were said in the press conference and the way that the front office members, the way that Joe Lacob and Bob Myers interacted with each other. I think that Lacob was a big factor in Bob Myers leaving. I think that there definitely was more going on underneath the surface than either of them would ever admit to or let on in any type of public or professional setting. But to me, it seemed like Bob Myers is burned out. It seemed to me like Joe Lacob is a very demanding boss. He made some kind of weird joke during the press conference about Bob Myers needing to stay till June 30th and oh, well, we'll see you through the end of the month because, technically, I guess that's when he's employed or, when his contract runs out. It's one of those kinds of things, though, where the guy's leaving. He's done so much over a decade. Are you really going to, work him to the bone down to the last? It was just a weird, it was a little bit of a strange back and forth. And Bob Myers, awkwardly smiled and was kind of it gave kind of weird vibes, and it just was kind of dude, I don't know, I just don't know that it was the right thing to say. And that came up because someone asked Joe Lacob what the plan is for the NBA draft, because it's coming up on June 22nd. And he was like, oh no, we're still going to use every ounce of Bob's knowledge up until, he leaves on June 30th. And he's still going to be a huge part of it. Whereas why? Bob Myers isn't going to be the one making the moves going forward. Why would he be the person still, heavily involved? I don't know. I mean, not that he can't provide some insight, but I don't know. It gave off weird dynamic vibes to me. Did you get that impression?
Sorry, I'm muted for some reason. Okay. I just want to add to that. You're absolutely right. There were a few awkward jokes that Joe Lacob made. And just to add to that, before actually providing the specific awkward jokes, in addition to what you said, why was Joe Lacob even up there? There was absolutely, him being up there with Bob Myers was very reminiscent of back during Chris Mullin's retirement ceremony. When Rick Barry had to go up in front of a Oracle Arena crowd and defend Joe Lacob because he was up there giving a speech to him. And look, the guy has a huge ego. There's no doubting that. People have used the word arrogant to describe him. I wouldn't go that far. But him being up there was disappointing. I didn't see what the point was. I mean, this was supposed to be a farewell for Bob Myers, not a, hey, I'm the one who found Bob Myers, so give me my due as well for Joe Lacob. That was weird. The joke about Bob Myers being his fifth son was kind of weird, his fifth child. It almost seemed a little condescending. I mean, Bob Myers is like a 48-year-old man. That just seemed awkward. I do agree. The question about who's going to manage the draft, and then Joe quickly saying it's going to, I think Tim Kawakami asked that. And then Joe Lacob saying that, we have him until June 30th. Technically, in reality, Bob Myers is done. He's cleaning out his office. That was all
as really... anyone would. It's dude, a decade, and change. And he's giving you his notice. It's kind of let the man go in peace. Not it's just weird to me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It was super weird. In terms of the reasons, I mean, it's a myriad. Originally, I discussed this on the last show that and this is the one part I feel is a little frustrating with Joe Lacob is you could have had Bob Myers stay if you didn't do what you always do with your negotiations, which is start off with a really low ball, borderline offensive offer. And that's exactly what he did to Bob Myers. This is the same owner who, when Stephen Curry was negotiating his recent 5-year Supermax extension, Joe Lacob originally was insisting on just giving him 4 years. And Stephen Curry and his reps were like, what? Like, no. And then Lacob, rescinded and gave him the Supermax. But to me, it's a lot of things. It's a confluence of issues. Obviously, Joe Lacob, that press conference, I think, was revealing in the sense that this is the boss you have to work for. Might be a little much, right? Although, again, I mean, this is an owner who led a team to 4 championships, so it's hard to be critical, but that's clearly the sense I think a lot of people got. But at the same time, Wiseman, James Wiseman to me is the symbol, I think, of why Bob Myers left for 2 reasons. One is he was drafted partly because of Joe Lacob's insistence on getting a big, even though they all three took credit. Lacob, Myers, and Kerr, they all took credit for that pick. But behind the scenes, it's such an obvious, that was a Joe Lacob pick. That's who Joe Lacob wanted. That was his guy. And so Bob Myers, on one hand, is going, okay, I have this owner who's meddling. The Athletic published an article back in February, March about how Lacob now has a draft board, has a room just dedicated to personnel, to the type of things that GM should be doing. Right now, Joe Lacob's doing that. But then the other side of the coin is also he had a head coach who was not playing the players he drafted. Right. So you have this two-front war as a GM where you have an owner who's meddling. You have a coach who is not playing the players you got for him. And he's looking at his life going, I have a beautiful family. I have all the money I need. My resume will speak for itself in terms of my legacy. What's the point? What's the point? So that's what I read about it. I don't know if that aligns with your views as well. In terms of, why he left, but what do you think? Is that?
No, I think you're spot on. I think you're absolutely spot on. And, like I said, I just think it came across that Joe Lacob is a demanding boss. You mentioned the article that came out in February, March, that he's now gotten super involved. And it's interesting because Lacob actually brought that up in the press conference as well. And it also was interesting that he said, I feel like there's some, wrong impressions of me out there. And you can't really say that about yourself. I'm sorry, but, you know what I mean? But you guys are wrong. I'm not, whatever. It's just kind of weird. But he said that he feels like, there were some wrong impressions about him, that owners should be involved and that, good ownership groups should be involved and should care and should be a part of the process and decision-making and should be a part of, but, that's where, maybe involved, but to a certain degree and a certain extent. And a line has to be drawn in the sand where as an owner, you do put that full trust and autonomy in your general manager. Just based on the comments, based on the things we've seen and heard, the reports in the past, and just you don't get that vibe. You get the vibe that Joe Lacob crossed over that line into where, he was taking some of the autonomy away from Bob Myers and the, ability to do his job. Now, I don't think Joe Lacob is a bad guy. I think he absolutely cares about the Golden State Warriors organization. He's proven that he can take this organization. He, has won so many championships. He's put in the money. He's invested the time. He clearly cares a lot about the Warriors. That's all great. But like I said, I still just think there has to be a line drawn in the sand to where you are not stepping over, the boundary in terms of interfering with your general manager's ability to do their job. And that to me is something that it seems like may have happened. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of Steve Kerr's usage of the young players, usage of James Wiseman. James Wiseman is a good representation of that, but all season long, there was the push and pull in terms of how does the coaching staff view the young players? How did they think their role should shape up on the team? And what does the front office or general manager see as being the way to develop these young guys? And it to me clearly didn't seem like they were on the same page, because why else would the Warriors have 6 players who were 23 and under? And 23 is at the top end because I'm including Jordan Poole in that, just because we've talked about him as being a young player going into the season. He was 22 to start the season, but who still needed some growth and still needed some maturity. And then you add in 2 rookies, 2 second-year players. James Wiseman, who is basically like a rookie or a second-year player because he played, half of his first season, then never played again for years. And then, like I said, I feel like I also kind of paired Jordan Poole with that group just because I feel like the narrative around him is continued to be, oh, well, he's young, he's still developing, he's still learning. We've seen him make great strides, but this season he maybe plateaued a little bit because he's young. It's a maturity. He's going to get there. So like I said, I kind of paired him just in with that group because the reality is he is young, 22 years old going into the season. I mean, it's 6 players that, you know what I mean, that are of college age, 4 teenagers plus James Wiseman, who wasn't old enough to drink alcohol at the start of the season. I mean, to me, the roster was constructed, by the front office to where they expect those guys to get opportunities to play, opportunities to develop, and chances to contribute. And the coaching staff didn't utilize them that way. Mm-hmm. They got DMP'd all season long. And I also thought it was interesting during the pre-trade deadline press conference that Bob Myers had that he talked about, why would we go get a big? Why would we go get a 7-footer? Like, hint.
Exactly.
James Wiseman was a 7-footer. Well, so he said what Myers quote, and I don't remember the exact wording or verbiage of it, was that, why would we go get a big or a 7-footer if the coaching staff isn't going to play them?
Exactly.
So we have to have those conversations as we're going into drafts, as we're going into trade deadlines, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the context of it, is that someone asked about, how they were going to go about picking or positions or whatever. And that he was like, oh, well, it's not just me. The coaching staff has to be on board. But I just thought it was interesting that his specific wording in that press conference was, we're not going to go get a 7-footer if the coaching staff isn't going to play him.
That to me was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we're going to have to talk about Steve Kerr's future because that is on the plate. He's a lame duck coach. You tweeted out, what fans think the team should do. If we're going into rebuild, is he the right coach for that? So we'll delve into that and so much more. Got to give some love to Prize Picks, one of our longtime sponsors, and a super fun game if you're into basketball to play during the NBA Finals. It's all about over-unders, minimum of 2 players, maximum of 6 players, and you have a chance to win up to 25 times your money if you bet, let's say, 6 players, over-unders on points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, whatever you want to do. They offer combos. You can go across different sports. You can bet on Nikola Jokic and maybe one of your Major League Soccer stars. You could stick just to Major League Baseball, whatever. The flexibility is there. And if you're in California, it's legal. That's one of the amazing perks. So go download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code locked on. So if you deposit $100, PrizePicks gives you $100. If you only got 50, 25, whatever it is, they'll match it. So when you start playing, you got double the money you put in. Don't forget to enter the promo code locked on at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers, this show we're doing right now is going to be a 2-parter. So if you're watching this, chances are, and you're not watching it live, this is going to be part 1 of a 2-part show. So stay tuned. There's going to be a second part coming in just a moment. We're going to talk about free agency there. You can follow Kylen Mills on nearly every social media platform, including TikTok, including Instagram, including Twitter, at Kylen Mills. Before we get into the Steve Kerr topic, I want to push back a little bit because there's still a few people out there, like Andre FRBK, for example, writes, Bob did not have an eye for talent. Let's be real. Wholeheartedly disagree with you. Never mind the fact that he routinely, because of the success that he oversaw and built, had to always draft in the late rounds, if not the second round. There is no GM out there that has a high success rate when you're drafting that late. But he still found Kevon Looney late in the draft. He still found Jordan Poole late in the draft with the number 28 pick, the 6th man on a world championship team. And never mind just the draft picks. He was also incredibly talented in finding diamonds in the rough out there. Gary Payton II, Damian Lee, Juan Toscano Anderson, all these bench pieces that no one else wanted. That was Bob Myers bringing him in. What about the deals? Whether it was the Kevin Durant trade to bring him in, then the deal to change Kevin Durant, who wanted out. and turn him into Andrew Wiggins.
Yep.
He had to decide that it was Andrew Wiggins that was going to be the piece that was coming in. That was him. So I don't agree with that at all. That he lacked an eye for talent. I think he had a phenomenal eye for talent, and he's going to be sorely missed. But Steve Kerr, look, he's a lame duck coach next year, and that's an interesting position to be in. I honestly do not. If my memory serves correct, and I try to do a little research on this, the only two lame duck coaches in recent NBA history was Mike D'Antoni. He was a lame duck coach in the final year of the Houston Rockets, of his Houston Rockets tenure, and that final year did not go great. And then I think Rick Adelman back in like the 2000s would finish off his career on a lame duck deal. Neither of those finished great. The lame duck status thing is bizarre for a head coach to be in. Before we go into the chat and see what other people have to say, Kylen, what are your thoughts? Like, what should the team do, and what do you think will they do? Because that's two completely separate topics. Like, we might think Steve Kerr or the team should do one thing with Steve Kerr, and they're probably going to do something completely different. But Kylen, what do you think they should do, and what do you think they will do?
Okay, so I think there's a lot of factors that, for me, influence what the future or what Steve Kerr's future is with the organization. If the Warriors go into full rebuild mode, which I'm not saying they're going to, I'm not saying that they should, but like if, for example, Draymond Green were to walk and then the Warriors trade a couple pieces, pick up some, you know what I mean? If there's some movement and it appears the Warriors are going to just, open, I don't want to say blow up the roster, but essentially if the big three is broken up, like already, that's a monumental movement in the Warriors roster construction. I mean, at some point they're going to I feel like they're going to have to move on from Steve Kerr when it comes time to look to the future. My biggest concern is that Steve Kerr has struggled to develop talent. I stand by that. I believe what I say. When you look at the track record and what happened this season in terms of Jonathan Kuminga, James Wiseman, ended up getting traded away after DNPing half the season. Now, obviously, it's a totally different scenario since he went to the Pistons, who were, well out of any type of contention. So, I get that. But at the same time, I don't think that Steve Kerr is maybe the best coach at developing players. And that's okay. It doesn't mean he's not a great coach. He won the championships for a reason. I think he's been excellent at working with the players and learning the players that he has. He lets the players have an input. He's created a positive culture. He leans into Steph in terms of having a say with how the team, should be run. I think there's a lot of positives that Steve Kerr brings to the table. I just don't think that necessarily developing young players is his strength. And at some point, the Warriors are going to have to move on to the future and start developing young talent. I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to have to be at some point that next step on from the dynasty. Steph, Clay, and Draymond are getting older, and we keep talking about how the window's closing. Now, all that being said, I don't think the window's closed yet. I think that the Warriors could still make another run at it while just trading out some role pieces, improving their bench, adding some depth. I don't think they necessarily have to blow up the roster. I don't think they need to change the starting five, and I don't think they need to separate the big three. I don't think we're there yet. If that was the case and the Warriors want to try to really run it out and see this out, I think that Steve Kerr stays because Steve Kerr knows how to work with Steph Curry. How many coaches are going to put up with Draymond Green's antics and handle it with a shrug? Because honestly, and some people disagree. Some people think that Draymond Green needs a coach who's going to get into his face and who's, going to try to rein him in. It's funny because you watch when Draymond gets in these situations, a lot of times Steve Kerr just, you see him on the bench and he just kind of shrugs and he doesn't have a big reaction to it. But I also think that there's some credit to him because he knows how to handle Draymond because certain players only respond to certain, coaching methods in different ways. So I think he knows this personnel super well. I think that if the Warriors are going to try to run it back with this core three and with the same starting five next season and the season beyond after that, then I think Steve Kerr maybe has one more extension or contract under his belt before you think about leaving. The other thing is too, who realistically at this point, especially if we were trying to run it back and we've got the same starting five next season, who's going to be a better coach the Warriors could bring in? I guess that would be, that's the other half of the question is okay, so if the Warriors, are to offload Steve Kerr, who's going to step in that role and do a better job?
Yeah. I mean, my suggestion has always been Brent Barry, but who knows if that's And one of the huge reasons I bring him up, by the way, is largely because back in 2019, when Bob Myers decided he needed help and he hired an assistant general manager, his original pick was Brent Barry. He wanted Brent. Ownership wanted Brent. That's the whole reason why that's the genesis for that idea. That's why it came into my head. I didn't just pull that out of a hat. The Warriors wanted him. He turned it down partly because it was going to be a lateral move. He was doing the same thing with the Spurs. I also Rick, his dad, told me as well that Brent his kids were happy in San Antonio, so his family was set there. He didn't want to upend that for a move that was not going to make him a full-on GM. I would love Brent Barry. I'd love to get the Barry family back with the Warriors. I think for those who watched Brent as a analyst and commentator on TNT all those years, you just like Steve Kerr, he has a very sharp mind. Whether it's realistic to bring him in, who knows? By the way, real quick, just my prediction. I forgot to mention this sooner in terms of what's going to happen next, because you talked about all those titles and who's going to take what. My guess, my strong prediction, and I do believe strongly in this. This is not based on anything I've heard, just my prediction. But I think Kirk Lacob will become the president of basketball operations, and then my guess is Mike Dunleavy Jr. becomes the GM. Those are two titles that Bob Myers held. I doubt the next person is going to hold both those titles. And the reason why I believe that's what's going to happen is if you give Kirk Lacob president of basketball operations, Joe can kind of dodge the nepotism label, right? Because a GM title is basically insinuating that's the final shot caller right there. That's the one who's making the final decisions. And if you give that title to Kirk Lacob, you're in Jerry Jones territory. You're not even like pretending anymore. Like Lacob is calling all the shots at that point. Whereas at least if you have Mike Dunleavy Jr. as your GM, he's the one at the press conferences. He's the one dealing with the media. So you're kind of avoiding on the face of things that whole nepotism argument. So that's my theory on that in terms of what happens.
True.
I don't know what if that sounds feasible or if that sounds realistic.
No, I think that sounds feasible. I think it makes sense. Yeah. On the GM argument, I mean, all reports are that the Warriors are going to stay in house. Exactly. And that's the plan. I did think it was kind of weird also at the press conference that Joe Lacob was like, oh, well, we have no idea what we're going to do moving forward. I heard that the Warriors knew this was coming. This wasn't something he found out that same morning. I don't know if that's the same wins that you were hearing.
I knew about it, the day before. I know when I heard that.
I forgot. You tweeted it and broke the news.
Dude, that was
Cyrus's flowers. There we go.
I'm not saying it for that reason, but it was ridiculous that Joe Lacob came out there and said, I didn't know he was going to leave until now. It's like, well, come on, man. Like, give us a break here. We all know what's like. That's not true at all.
Right.
Here's the thing that big picture is I'm very fascinated about. Like I've said this on the show repeatedly. I was spoiled growing up, not as a basketball fan. The Warriors were awful, but I also love the 49ers. And Eddie D, as a child growing up, laid the blueprint for how to create a dynasty that can last well over a decade. And this is where we're going to see what kind of owner Joe Lacob is. Is he going to be an Eddie D type of owner, someone who creates and fosters a culture and environment that's family based? I mean, look, someone in the chat mentioned Sean Livingston, for example. The team does keep a lot of former players. Zaza Pachulia is another one who gets elevated to front office roles. They like keeping these players around. But Eddie D also made it very clear to these same players, when you're no longer an asset for our team, when you're no longer a reason for us winning championships, we're moving on. Like this is still a business in that regard. And the players accepted that. He was very transparent. He was very honest about it. And we're about to find out what kind of owner Joe Lacob is. Is he going to be someone who appeals to nostalgia, does what he can to keep the core three around as long as possible, despite the fact that by keeping them around, you're no longer a championship contending team? Or is he going to make those hard decisions? And to me, the most hardest decision is not Draymond, even though I hope he comes back. I don't want to see him leave, but I think the hardest decision is Clay. I really think if you're looking at this team and you're thinking to yourself, I want to continue being a dynasty. I want to continue winning championships. If that's your ethos, Klay Thompson is not a part of that anymore. Like he can be if he's relegated, but that dude has so much pride. He sees himself still as a superstar. So I don't know if that's feasible, but as much as I love him, I love Klay Thompson. It pains me to make the suggestion, but I think that's where they got to start. And I think you got to even trade him while he still has value. And that $43 million that you're trading him for can bring back assets. What are your thoughts on that? I know that's kind of crazy to bring up, but like, is the idea of trading Clay far out there? Is there any realistic sense to it? Am I talking crazy? Your thoughts, Kylen?
I mean, I think a lot of those answers lie in how Joe Lacob wants to see out this dynasty and
Right.
what he wants his legacy to be,
Right.
because it would certainly put an exclamation point on everything that he's done and the way this dynasty run has gone down if the Warriors' big three retire as Warriors. There's no question at this point that Steph Curry is retiring Golden State Warrior. I don't see any scenario where he leaves the organization before retiring, and that, like, to me, that's a foregone conclusion. There's no way they let Steph Curry go. And I think Steph Curry also is a guy who's made clear, well, I say that in terms of loyalty, but a lot of left turns have been made in the NBA in the past. But I think that Steph Curry, just based on what I know about him, is going to retire Golden State Warrior. And that's why Clay and Dre are the two big question marks. Like, I think Klay Thompson would sign and would stay. Like, I think that I could see Klay Thompson retiring Golden State Warrior. He's got the boat. He loves the Bay Area. Him and Steph are super close. They're the Splash Brothers. They know how each other plays. And obviously Draymond's the same. To me, Draymond, though, is the one who, like, it wouldn't surprise me if he left. And that's why I think Clay is that kind of conundrum, because I see Steph staying until he retires. I absolutely could see Draymond leaving. Now, that being said, I don't think that Draymond is not going to take this player option on his current contract.
Agreed.
There ain't no other team in the league that's going to pay him $27.5+ million. Great defender that Draymond Green is. His skill set doesn't work the same way in every offensive system the way it does with the Golden State Warriors, based on their personnel and his ability to run the pick and roll with Steph Curry. So to me, his value isn't, standard across the league. His value kind of depends on, exactly what kind of system you're running. And I just don't think he's as valuable anywhere else as he is with the Warriors. And I don't think, after all the off-court antics, the punch, the other things that go on around Draymond Green, I think there are a lot of teams that wouldn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
I just don't see him getting that money anywhere else. So that's why I think Draymond Green is back next season. Whether the Warriors figure something out, whether they extend him, I don't know, but I think that he's going to pick up the player option. I do think that. And then I agree with you. I think that leaves Klay Thompson as the big question mark. I don't think the Warriors trade him. I
don't think so either. I mean, I'm just saying that's what they should do, but I don't know if they will. Yeah,
I'm not appalled. Like, I get what you're saying in terms of getting value back. If Klay's contract were to come up and the Warriors don't extend him, then, he walks away for nothing. So, like, I get the business advantage to doing it that way. I just don't think that Steph Curry is going to sign off on that. I think that would just, like, ruffle way too many feathers. I think it would tear apart the fan base. So I don't think they'll do it, but I get what you're saying in terms of how it makes sense. But I think Draymond and Klay and Steph will all be back next year. And if they all decide to run it back in both 2024 and then into the 24-25 season, then I think Steve Kerr is back. I don't see Steph, Klay, and Dre signing off on a coaching change. Like, I don't, unless something major were to happen. I don't know what you think, but, like, in terms of just the way they seem to work together and have that relationship, like, I don't know.
Again, this is where we're going to find out what Lacob's ultimate philosophy is. Is he going to be someone who will let nostalgia win over and keep the core three who led a dynasty? Because one thing he did say many years ago and is that he doesn't want this Warriors team to follow the same pattern that the Lakers did when they started to decline in the Kobe Bryant era. And so we saw, like, a large number of years where the Lakers were an awful team, but their sole appeal was watching Kobe. And Lacob has said he doesn't want that same thing to happen to the Warriors with Steph, where 2 years from now, this is a team that's not making the playoffs, but Steph is Steph. He's still, box office, and we all love him. But he can't carry a team alone. I mean, no one outside of, I don't know, Giannis, LeBron in his prime. I mean, hardly anyone can do that. So I don't know. By the way, I want to answer this chat real quick from Jeremy Few, who's defending Klay. I don't blame you for defending him, and he did have an awesome February offensively, but he also started to decline. And whether conditioning has something to do with that, whether it was him starting to play those back-to-backs, there was a correlation there between Clay playing the back-to-backs as he was held out for most of the season until about March. Then he started playing the back-to-backs, but then right at that same time, his numbers just started to decline and it led to the playoffs. It was more than just a month. It was actually a 3 to 4 month decline in his game. Yeah, so I don't know. There's some tough decisions. Now, the Warriors are going to be pursuing free agents, and here's part 2. So why don't we get into it? Here we go.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. You can follow Kylen Mills on most social media platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus, Saatsaz, on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. Are we ready to get into free agents, Kylen? Is there anything you want to finish up in terms of the Kerr discussion, in terms of anything?
Yes, I have thoughts. Okay, so going into the free agent discussion, this is something that I wanted to mention. I think that Klay Thompson still has a role with this organization if they were to re-sign him moving forward, but he's going to have to take a massive pay cut. That's
Agreed.
The bottom line to me. Like, I could see trading him away, as you mentioned, for a business reason, because you're afraid that, hey, the Warriors don't keep him. He doesn't end up staying after his contract, ends. You want to get something in return. But I think Klay Thompson could still have a role, even if his skills have declined to some extent. Because moving forward, he's still going to have games where he gets hot. He's still going to have games where he does shoot. You mentioned the month of February. Klay Thompson, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he was lights out. Yeah, he struggled in the playoffs, but it doesn't hurt to have a player like that on your roster. Even if he was at some point in his career coming in off the bench, which, I don't say that to be disrespectful, but it's a possibility. And I know everyone considers Klay Thompson Warriors royalty. He's a legend. He always will be. But hey, at some point in his career, he may have to come off the bench. That just may be what it is. Maybe his skill set does continue to decline. It doesn't hurt to have a shooter. And the older you get, the style of the game that he plays, he could still be effective in knocking down shots and spacing the floor with the way that he plays the game as, one of the most elite 3-point spot up shooters there is. And so I don't necessarily think the Warriors need to get rid of him even after this contract expires. I just think he is going to have to take a massive pay cut.
Massive.
And the rumors out there, last summer that Klay wanted a max extension. We've heard Draymond wants max extensions. That's just not realistic. With a luxury tax situation the way it is, the Warriors would potentially be $500 million into the luxury tax next season. There's no way. They can't be signing these older guys, these veterans, to max extensions. Yes, they've been important parts of the Dynasty run. They're coming up on the twilight of their careers. If the Warriors want to continue to be contenders, they just cannot afford to pay those huge salaries, because we saw this season, the starting five wasn't enough to win a championship. They have to bring in better role players. To do that, they need to free up some money and some, and to cut down on the luxury tax bill that currently is in place. So Draymond, I think, will pick up the player option. If they were to re-sign Draymond or Klay Thompson, it's going to have to be huge pay cuts. Would both those guys do that? Would they take pay cuts? We saw Andrew Wiggins do it. Kevon Looney, both absolutely could have gotten more money, but they wanted to keep this as a competitive team, and they ultimately did what was best for the team. So I just want to say kudos to those two, because Wiggins is an insane bargain for the money he's getting paid based on how big his role was, like last year during the playoffs, and even this year once he got back. At times he's the Warriors' second best player. So I don't know, though. That's my question: is would Draymond and Klay take huge pay cuts to stay on the Warriors and to keep this as a competitive group, or will the I want money and egos get in the way?
Yeah, you said something earlier, which I don't know. I don't know if I agree with, and that's okay, obviously. But I don't know if Draymond's going to opt into that player option. I really don't.
Really?
I think just because I do think he has enough value out to get a deal out there. He's got Clutch as his representation. They're not going to accept, they're always thirsting for the biggest deals. Yeah, and there's just too many teams out there that I think would do what they can to get him. I don't know. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think he's going to opt out. But I also do think the Warriors will present him with some sort of like 3-year, $60 million extension, and that will keep him probably, I hope. He also did say if Bob Myers leaves, he doesn't know if he's going to stay. Right. A lot of questions. A lot of questions. I want to address a few things in the chat before we jump into free agents. Nick J wrote, any talk about Dante DiVincenzo? No, just because chances are he's gone. I mean, it would shock me if he stays. His player option is for $4 million and change. He probably is going to make a lot more out there, and the Warriors can't offer any more than that. Yeah, so he's probably gone. If that changes, we'll talk about him. But until then, and then Tony G wrote a trade proposal. Trade Jordan Poole, Ryan Rollins, and the 19th pick and a second-round pick for Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, and Nick Claxton from the Brooklyn Nets. The reason why I haven't brought up the Nets a lot in trade talks is because I spoke to a Nets insider who said the team will not trade Nick Claxton. They view him as part of
I would like Nick Claxton. Like that would be a great addition to the Warriors. Sorry,
I would too. And the moment I heard that, I was like, damn it, because that's like the player I probably want most. I would not mind a Dorian Finney-Smith, but he's making he's scheduled to make $15 million next year. Jordan Poole's closer to 28. So Brooklyn would have to throw in a second piece. If Royce O'Neal's a second piece, I'd be open to that. Would you be open to that? Jordan Poole, Ryan Rollins, and draft picks for Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal. I think it makes the Warriors better short term. Your thoughts? Would you do that?
So you're saying if you took Claxton out of the deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would be opposed to it. I definitely think they would get better. I just, man, like of those players, like imagine, Claxton in the Warriors starting lineup at center and Kevon Looney coming off the bench. Like that to me would be, and I've been advocating for size for this team, all year. We both have talked about it since last year, and I like Claxton's game. So I don't know if you take him out of the mix. I don't know. But yeah, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm with you.
I just don't feel super strongly about it, but
I hear you. Yeah, I don't feel strong about that at all. Jeremy Few writes Chris Mullin or Sean Livingston for next general manager. Chris Mullin already had that role. With mixed results, I don't see him jumping back into that position. He already did it with the Warriors and Kings. Sean Livingston would be interesting, but chances are it's going to be Mike Dunleavy Jr., who has more experience and has already been groomed for that. And then one other. Oh, and I guess this is where we can jump into free agents. And we'll start with Ernie B. Hernandez, who writes Dylan Brooks or Ben Simmons if he's bought out. I have thought about that as well. Every time I bring up Dylan Brooks, I'm met with scorn, disagreement. No one wants Dylan Brooks on the Warriors. I don't blame anyone for saying that. I'm not going to advocate for him. But for a veteran minimum deal, if he behaves himself, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world. Your thoughts, Kylen?
I can't. I'm sorry.
I hear you. I get it.
So Dylan Brooks plays really hard. Warriors need defense. That's all well and good, but I could never, ever co-sign on that. Dylan Brooks, I have concerns, is a cancer to any organization. I'm concerned that he brings a level of toxicity. There's a reason why the Memphis Grizzlies said, see you later. We saw the problems he caused for the organization throughout the season. I just think the Warriors have done a good job throughout this dynasty of also bringing in the right character pieces, like bringing in players that also fit the culture. And I just don't see Dylan Brooks is fitting the Warriors culture. I don't think he's a bad player. I don't dislike him aside from all the dirty plays that he makes, but you can make the same argument for Draymond Green. I get it. I just think that culture fit wise, I don't see it happening. Dub Nation would probably burn at the stake, or I don't know, would storm Chase Center. I can't see anybody being on board with that. So I don't know. I couldn't. I don't think I could. Yeah, no.
I hear you. And again, I'm not advocating for it, but and it's a huge
fun to talk about. It's fun to talk about.
Yeah, and it's a huge if. The if being, will he behave himself? If the answer to that question is yes,
I don't trust him that he would. Like, I get what you're saying. If he, swore to turn over a new leaf and be on his best behavior, I don't know about that. Plus, if the Warriors retain Draymond, I just can't even imagine a team with Draymond and Dylan Brooks on the team. It would easily be the most hated NBA team.
That would be a crazy team. That would be a psychotic team.
Saying, you got two hotheads that are making all these.
Absolutely. All right. So here are some free agents, and I'm going to just read a bunch of them. I'm going to read all the ones that I consider feasible for a veteran minimum deal. We have not done extensive research on this. This is just day one of exploring this topic, but it's a fun topic because ultimately, again, we've covered this before. And just to rehash real quick, the Golden State Warriors right now find themselves in a position where if they keep everyone, they're going to be approximately $90 million over the $400 million budget that Joe Lacob has publicly said that he wants to spend no more than. So they have to cut salary. I don't know what the hell is going to happen there. I don't know if they're just going to trade Jordan Poole and get nothing back to clear salary. I have no idea. That's one of the many challenges the next GM is going to face, and maybe that's part of the reason why Bob Myers said peace. He doesn't have to deal with that. So with that said, the only way with this new CBA, because the mid-level exception is gone. So the only way the Warriors can get pieces back is through trade or through veteran minimum deals. So here are some players that are out there. These are players that I'm going to present that I think might be a good fit, but I'm going to present it to Kylen, and people in the chat can love it or hate it. Again, I don't believe strongly in any of these. These are just ideas. Kevin Love, who got a DNP in game one. Would you want him on the Warriors, Kylen Mills?
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to Kevin Love. He's a player I actually advocated the Warriors look into, and there were some rumors surrounding that going into the NBA trade deadline this past season. The Warriors need size. They need players who also have size, length, and can stretch the floor with their shooting. Kevin Love can knock down shots. He's in the twilight of his career, but the Warriors don't need major pieces. And, you look at Otto Porter Jr. from last season, or from a season before, I guess last season. Wow, it's crazy that the 2022-23 season's already in the books. But from the 2022 championship run, the Warriors just had a little bit more height and players who could go in and hit a couple threes, space the floor, and help in that regard in the second unit. And to me, Kevin Love can still do that at his age. Even, again, a player that we talk about players being in their twilight whose skills maybe have declined a little bit. If he can still hit shots, he could be of use to the Warriors. That's how I see it. What do you think, Cyrus?
No, I agree. But as someone wrote in the chat too, doubtful he's leaving Miami, but part of this could be just a wish list. Two players I'm going to throw out, three players real fast here. Will Barton, Christian Wood, Brooke Lopez. I don't know if Christian Wood will be available for the veteran minimum. I've wanted him on the Warriors for years. I think he would be a fantastic fit. And then Will Barton and Brooke Lopez are in there as well. Any of those players excite you or interest you? Your thoughts?
I think of the three, I'm just leaning towards Brooke Lopez. Once again, I would love to bring in a center who could score and let Kevon Looney be that guy who's the rebounder and that just kind of bangs in the paint and gets messy with the second unit. And Brooke Lopez is still putting up great numbers. I like his game. I think did he average 16 points per game this season? I think he did, right around there. Yeah. But, you're looking at the size, a guy who, can be a threat on offense, which the Warriors have lacked. They don't have a scoring big on the roster right now because you're looking at Kevon Looney and Draymond Green. And I think it hurts them in certain matchups in the playoffs because, those two don't keep defenses honest. I think it got better when Draymond was on, for example, Anthony Davis, for example, in the Lakers series, because Draymond could come up with the high ball screens and get AD out the paint. But how about getting someone? I think if you're going to add a big, they either have to be a post presence and a player who can score strong inside, or they have to be a big who Kevin Love, whether it's a small forward or a 3 or a 4, whatever, it has to be someone who can hit outside shots. So to me, like those are two like necessary things. Brook Lopez is a player who can bang inside. And so for that reason, I kind of like it. And I just keep thinking back to, the ADs of the world. And now you look at the Denver Nuggets, you're going to have to find a 5 who can compete, and who can play with a Nikola Jokic. And to me, I don't see how the Warriors, if they were stacked up in the postseason against the Nuggets, would have been able to do that. Now that, obviously they did it in 2022 during the playoffs, but now the Nuggets have added Jamal Murray and have added a couple of big pieces. I don't know. I would love to see them bring in a center and
honestly, I do agree with a lot of people in the chat are saying about Brook that he probably will not be available for the veteran minimum. He probably won't even leave the Bucks. I actually made a mistake there. I didn't mean to say Brook Lopez. I meant to say Robin Lopez, who has been linked.
I guess I was even thinking of a trade. Okay.
Yeah, Brook Lopez is not going to be available for the mid. That was my bad. I apologize. I meant
Robin, not for a minimum. No, God.
No, Robin Lopez though could be. Robin Lopez's value is much less. I would love to see Robin on the Warriors. Honestly, Judith Pierre, who writes Andre Drummond, I've seen you write that a couple times. The Warriors are not going to chase a player like that, though. I mean, if they're not going to bring in if they're going to scoff at DeMarcus Cousins, Dwight Howard, and Andre Drummond's not going to be it. I mean, so that type of player, I highly doubt they're going to seek out. They want someone who has some two-way value. When we come back, I'm going to present a player who I think the Warriors have a reasonable shot at getting, despite the fact that he's probably going to command a lot more than the veteran minimum. I think there's a possibility. It's loose, but the hope is there at least. Got to give some love first to Game Time. One of our newer sponsors, but super exciting, simply because with Game Time, you can find tickets to any event you want to go to, and they offer a low price guarantee. What that means is let's say you buy a ticket from Game Time to a concert you really want to go to, or a sporting event you really want to go to. Then you find seats from another dealer that are in the same row, in the same section, but they're priced at, let's say, half off. Game Time will match the difference. They will give you your money back, and that is literally what a low price guarantee is. And you don't have to plan months in advance for these tickets. You can buy them last minute. They've got resources. They've got supplies. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $20 off whatever tickets you're looking for right now. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Everydayers, I have no idea what's coming up next on the show, but follow us on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. That's where we post all our show times, our upcoming guests. Really quickly, Nick J wrote, and this is something I was going to bring up. Why not bring back Juan Toscano-Anderson and Damian Lee? They were awesome fits for this team 2 years ago. If you're going to run it back and the Warriors delusionally think with this team they're going to win a championship next year, at least bring back the players that were a part of it. I have no objection to bringing back Juan Toscano-Anderson and Damian Lee. Kylen, those aren't sexy names. Those aren't names that are flashy in any regard, but I wouldn't mind it. Your thoughts?
I wouldn't mind it either. I mean, I like both JTA and Damian Lee in terms of culture fits. They brought the energy on the bench. It's crazy how big of a difference there was between what seemed like a lot of energy and camaraderie from 2022 or from the 2022 championship run compared to the 2023 Warriors. Like, it just didn't feel the same at all. And those two are a big reason why. Also with Damian Lee, you've got a player, I feel like unfairly took a lot of heat from the fan base, but in general, like, he's a player you could bring in for limited minutes and, he'll hit some shots. Like, Yeah, of course he had a couple, he had some off nights, but in general, he can come in and score a couple buckets lower down in the rotation if you need him. And then Juan Toscano-Anderson, he was also a player to me that you knew what you got. And in terms of the Warriors' struggles this year, it's just too many guys who've been inconsistent. Jordan Poole, far from consistent. In general, their bench play just not consistent. Jonathan Kuminga, even not consistent. And it's like Juan Toscano Anderson, you're going to get a guy who's going to go in and play, 110%, who's going to play tough defense, who's going to grab some boards, he's going to knock some people around, commit a couple fouls. But again, like for a lower rotation piece, like I don't mind that.
Same.
I don't know. One thing that I wanted to say was Robert Mack had a comment in the live, and also hi to MJ. MJ said hi, Kylen Mills. Hi, MJ.
What's up?
Robert Mack commented, looking back on the James Wiseman trade and how the season ended, would you two consider the trade a total disaster? I think that's an interesting question. And honestly, yes, I do. I mean, I do. I don't know about you, Cyrus.
Yes,
but looking back at the
absolutely.
2022 season, I kind of wish that, like, if the Warriors wanted to keep GP2, they should have just paid him and kept him here between the start of this last season and this season. And in general, like, where did it end up getting the Warriors? Nowhere.
I don't think this is even like a controversial. I mean,
okay, you don't. That's interesting. No, I mean, yeah,
no, they had. You could have gotten Gary Payton II a year ago. I mean, you let Gary Payton II go for money reasons. You get him back when you never had to lose him in the first place. So I mean, the part of it that is a bungle is that you had the number 2 pick in the draft in 2020. It was a very thin draft, one of the worst drafts, in all honesty, in recent history. But to just waste it like that, to just squander it and get nothing. I mean, I know technically you got Gary Payton II back, but that move was supposed to be to win you a world championship. You didn't come close. So total bust. No, a horrible move. I don't know if it's even a debate.
Anyways.
Well,
we're in agreement on that. I don't know if it is a debate to anyone. Well, I mean, it's just so crazy because initially when the news broke, people were so excited to get Gary Payton II back. And then everything changed. We found out he was injured more than we thought. He didn't end up playing, until the postseason. Then even in the postseason, I thought he was inconsistent too. Another player I thought was, not consistent, not, in the shape that he was or in the form that he was in during the 2022 championship run. So to me, yeah, definitely a bust. I kind of wish the Warriors hadn't given up on James Wiseman just yet. I think he still has potential in the NBA, or at least not given up on him for that reason, because, like, they didn't have to give up GP2 in the first place. They did. They brought him back. He was hurt. He wasn't able to contribute this season anyway. So just like kind of a bummer.
Or keep Sadiq Bey, who was part of that trade, and for a brief moment,
he
was one of the Warriors. I would not have minded Sadiq Bey on this roster right now. You're absolutely right. That was just bungled big time. And to me, when that happened, that was like really where Bob Myers was starting to head out. He was like, this is a mess. I'm done with this. Absolutely. Here's the trade that I was that I teased before we went to the break, or not trade, a free agent. Stephen Curry's brother, Seth Curry, is an unrestricted free agent. Normally, you would have no chance in hell. He's going to command more than a veteran minimum, but he is Steph's brother. And if there's any player where you can work an under the table deal, I don't know, throw an extra $15 million from Under Armour. Steph, why don't you just give him some money and then get some more for Under Armour? Whatever you can work out, Seth Curry can get the money that he would officially get from a team, from his brother, and still come here for a veteran minimum. You're not breaking rules doing that. There's no rule that says, your sibling can't throw in extra money to entice you to come to a team. So that is my little sneaky hope that Seth Curry somehow comes and reunites with his brother. Any realism to that, Kylen, or am I just totally wishing to the clouds?
I would love Seth Curry, actually. I think that would be a great move. I don't know that I see that happening. However, the Curry family is super close. Like, can you imagine how excited Sonia and Dell would be if their sons were on the same team? Like, I'm just saying, like, they, they're that family that tugs at the heartstrings. So that, and the Curry brothers have a close relationship. It's something they've talked a lot about. If it were to happen, that would be the only reason why. I don't know. I mean, would Steph be willing to, just hand his brother a couple mil in exchange for him taking a vet minimum to sign with the Warriors? So. I mean, it's an interesting scenario that you're proposing. I don't know that I think it would happen, but I would love Seth Curry. You're looking at another great shooter with Clay, appearing to be past his prime. Why not add another guy who's lights out?
Absolutely.
What were his shooting splits last year? Like I mean, because he's been close to like 50, 40, 90, hasn't he?
Seth is a solid player. I don't think there's any negative to bringing him in. He's an okay defender. He's not great, but he's
Yeah,
not
I would
a
say that's the thing.
yeah,
Defensively,
but he's not a
yeah.
liability either.
No, he's not a Jordan
yeah.
Poole on defense, so I'll say
Yeah,
that.
and
Like Jordan Poole's like a liability who other teams gonna headhunt. Like I don't know.
they got to trade him. They got to trade Poole. Like the more I think about it, I don't understand how he stays. Anyways, a few more players because we're running out of time here. I didn't realize how long we went. This is one player who I think you could get for the veteran minimum. I think he would be a solid fit for the Warriors. Would love your thoughts. And that's Jay Crowder. Disappointing stint in Milwaukee after he forced his way out of Phoenix. And keep in mind, folks, veteran minimums, you're not gonna hit home runs with these. All right, it's swings and misses. They hit a home run with Otto Porter Jr., Nemanja Bjelica. Those were huge hits. Didn't have that last year. So what are your thoughts on Jay Crowder? I would love him. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I actually would like Jay Crowder too. I think he would be a great pickup on a vet minimum. I mean, strong, physical. We've already addressed the fact that, the Warriors will take all the size and rebounding prowess they can get. And he can defend, he can grab boards, shoots well, So, I mean, I don't see there being a drawback. I like Jay Crowder on a vet minimum. Like I said, on a vet minimum,
exactly.
I think that's a good pickup.
Exactly.
Someone just commented, Ernie Chavez says Jay Crowder complains.
Yeah, he has. I mean, but again, he forced his way out of Phoenix, but hopefully this last year also humbled him a little bit and made him realize, okay, you're not complaining anymore. You're going to be lucky just to get a job at this point. A few people sometimes come to me with Miles Turner saying that's all they need. The reason why I would not ever count on that, besides the fact that he just signed a big extension with the Pacers, is Miles Turner is someone who complains when he doesn't get the ball. And I have never seen the Warriors sign a player, Kelly Oubre is the one exception, and they gave up on that fast, I've never seen the Warriors sign a player with that kind of mentality, with I need the ball in my hands, I need the focus to be on me, and that's who Miles Turner is. Speaking of complaining, he complains if he doesn't get the ball. So that's why I don't ever see that being a realistic possibility. Anyways, yeah, Lloyd T, I do agree. GP2 is possibly a bust. Speaking of the GP2 thing, and how crazy was it that the Warriors accused the Trailblazers of basically medical malpractice and then just decided, no, actually, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about that. We're just going to be like, I never understood what happened there. Do you? Like, they made a big deal about that, I thought, and then just turned out to not be a big deal. And the whole thing was crazy. So
the whole this whole season, man, it's just like it's a wash because it really was such a strange situation. Then after that came out, a lot of people were accusing the Warriors of being frauds and that the Warriors were making false accusations, that the Blazers should come back and in turn file a complaint against them. That whole thing was bizarre, but no, there was never any clear explanation given. And I actually spoke with a rep from the Warriors regarding that whole situation who just said, oh, well, it wasn't, the report wasn't true that a complaint was initially filed. We had never formally filed anything.
Right.
We were just looking into it. But dude, that got leaked from somewhere. It was implied in Bob Myers' press conference when he spoke about it. He was just like, all we're going to say is that we want whatever's fair. And, we may or may not he wasn't, he couldn't because he said of the, investigations or whatever was ongoing, go too much into detail, but the whole thing was just weird. And if the Warriors did know how injured Gary Payton II was, why would they have traded for him in the first place? It doesn't make sense. So to me, the Warriors must not have known how bad it was. But did the Blazers conceal anything? What's going on with the steroid? It was all bizarre. At one point, I think GP2's agent came out and said, "Oh no, he was never getting." I don't know. It was a hot mess. It was just a hot mess. And it never really came full circle as to why any of that went down the way it did. Then all of a sudden, a month later, oh, just an FYI, the Warriors never filed a complaint and they're not going to, and never mind. And, maybe the Warriors just figured at that point, we think we're going to be able to get him back before the postseason. At this point, it's not worth going through, and then what would the, ultimate punishment be for the Blazers? It's not like the Warriors were going to get money back. It's not like they were going to get anything really from that whole situation. So I don't know. Maybe that was what the whole thing was weird. I can't.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah. Real quick before we go, I got to run. I didn't realize what time it is. Jill Espina writes, please develop Patrick Baldwin Jr. into a center. I believe I don't know if it was Kerr who said it, but
really,
I think Kerr or Meyer said that was never the plan for him. That they see him more as like a stretch 4, a 3. Like they don't see him as a center, even though he is 6'10". Yeah. So I just wanted
he's just so skinny right now. Like I couldn't see him banging in the paint because he's still thin. I don't know his exact body weight offhand, but you need to put a little bit of meat on him if he was going to bang in the paint. But I could see him as a stretch 4. I mean, we've talked at length about his pretty shot, his ability to hit from outside. I mean, I think he could be a huge threat for the Warriors in the future because, he could be a floor spacer.
Yeah. And Rich Dub, I really would not mind Scotty Barnes and the Warriors. But the Raptors are very shrewd trade partners. So if you want Scotty Barnes, you're gonna have to give up the house. Jordan Poole will not be enough. And one thing I've learned from throwing out a trade proposal for Karl Anthony Towns a couple weeks ago is that most teams do not value Jordan Poole. Like whatever we see him as in terms of, hey, he gives you salary, really? He's got star potential. Dude, at least the Timberwolves fan base, they were pooping on that idea in 2 seconds because of Jordan Poole. Dude, this is going to be a crazy offseason. We'll see what happens. Yeah, and Robert Bryant, this is the best case scenario though for Patrick Baldwin Jr., Michael Porter Jr. If he turns into that, the Warriors are stoked, and let's hope that's what happens. What a weapon the Nuggets have. Any final thoughts on the NBA Finals? Let's finish there before we go. Nuggets won Game 1.
Yep.
Is it going to finish that way?
My prediction is that the Nuggets win the series. I think they're the NBA champions, deservedly so. I think they were consistently the best team in the NBA during the regular season. Hats off to Jamal Murray and Jokic for finally getting it done. And maybe I'm speaking too soon, but I think the Nuggets are the better team. I think they're going to win it. And by the way, fun fact, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but NBA Finals numbers can considerably down from Game 1 compared to a year ago because, Steph Curry and the Warriors are now on the floor. And granted, you also had the Boston Celtics, who are one of the most storied franchises in the NBA. And you had the two, the storyline in terms of the two dynasties, Dynasty of Old and Dynasty of New, going at it in a number of other storylines. So there you go. But people watch for Steph Curry. So I could go on about that all day. Game 1 was very meh to me, but I think I think the Nuggets win. What do you think? What's your prediction?
Easily, like a sweep or 5. Yeah. I don't think it's
sweep.
Even gonna be, might be. They're just such different levels. Like, the Nuggets are good. Congratulations. That was like one of the I missed. I did not think the Nuggets would have won the title this year. I didn't think they were going to be this good. And Bruce Brown was a massive pickup. KCP was a massive pickup. Kudos, congratulations. And they got a healthy. They got a healthy Mike Porter Jr. They're good. They're good. We'll see what happens. And again, that's a team that when you're thinking about the Warriors and their personnel and the roster and how to construct it, you got to construct it to combat the Nuggets. I mean, they're probably going to.
That's what I was talking about. Like, you need to plan for someone to defend Jokic.
You have no chance in hell right now with this team. So I'm very curious to see what they do. Very curious. Mm-hmm. Kylen, always a pleasure. We'll be back at this soon. We'll follow us on Twitter. We'll post it there in terms of when. Any big plans for you this weekend?
No big plans. You said you got to hop off somewhere. I've been working. I got another game to call tomorrow, so I'm about to chill a little bit tonight and do some prep. Where are you running off to?
Go to get a burrito and meet my landlord.
Burrito.
And pay my landlord. I forgot. I'm meeting my landlord right now to pay my rent.
Oh, okay. So, all right.
Yeah.
Do that. That is important, Cyrus.
Totally by the books transaction. We're meeting in a parking lot each month. I don't know. Is that what you do with your landlord? Do you meet your landlord in a parking lot each month?
No, I send the money over Sal, you weirdo.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Kylen. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Have a great weekend, everybody.
You too. Bye.